Hello, my name is Mark Grandison. I'm an Australian composer based in Sydney and director of music at an independent girls' school. I discovered this composition competition via the Australian Music Centre website. The title of my piece derives from a 1920 study of the great Swiss modernist artist Paul Klee by Leopold Zahn. In it, Zahn calls Klee's works the cosmic picture book, praising the painter's mysticism and serene visions of new worlds. This notion of a series of works that accrue to depict an artist's vision of the cosmos in its stupendous variety was a very attractive one to me. And so I composed this piece based on Klee's astonishing paintings. Now, the paintings of Klee frequently employ a cool, formal objectivity in their structural elements, and this drew me to a modernist musical language of the mid-20th century, whilst their sensual use of light and colour drew from me music that evokes directly and unapologetically human feelings and sentiments. So my aim in these pieces was to adapt the sometimes severe, schematic intellectualism of modernist music into a more poetic and passionate service by reconfiguring its dissonant, disjunct, complex gestures into a more emotively driven musical narrative. Now, I'd like to discuss briefly the 5 paintings that inspired this 5-movement suite, a range of paintings that I thought integrates the wide-ranging attributes of Klee's inimitable and complex cosmos. None are meant to be directly correspondent to the painting's visual components. Rather, they provide an energizing catalyst, a notional starting point for my musical imagination, in which structural relations, densities, line and color shadings are all suggestive of musical textures, harmonic and rhythmic language. So here is the image that inspired Movement 1. It's Klee's twittering machine. As you can see, it's this crazy automaton, somewhat playful in a bizarre way, but also an abomination of nature. We see 4 robotic, bird-like creatures mounted on a wire with a crank. They seem to scream with a high-pitched clamour. In response, the music will often suddenly and violently change gears throughout, as one could imagine this relentless, dysfunctional machine doing. So here's a recording of the opening bars taken from a MIDI version of the Sibelius score. It is somewhat robotic in sound itself, alas, but it will give you a bit of an idea. You'll hear the percussion set up an asymmetrical grinding ostinato pattern beneath an hysterical woodwind line evocative of these screeching creatures. Full Moon is the catalyst for Movement 2. It possesses a deceptive, childlike naivety and wonderment in its depiction of this otherworldly nightscape. We see a garden in which moonlit plants seem to float in a space beyond time, and the music likewise lingers in this slow, uneasy calm. You'll hear a solo horn open with a recurring motive of a rising, large leaping interval followed by descending steps. And it really is a horn obbligato throughout this movement, which I thought captured that magical still quality of a full moon hovering in the dark sky at night. Movement 3 is based on what I view as a playful image. It's entitled Dance of the Moth. It involved a technique Clay called taking a line for a walk. Whilst capturing a moment in the moth's aberrant trajectory, the painting also epitomizes the ceaselessly impetuous and erratic nature of this creature. The movement in response to this is what I view to be a scurrying moto perpetuo, almost a touch of scherzo in it. Here are the few opening moments of the third movement. Insula Dulcamara is a painting that fills one's field of vision with speculative shapes and shadings, and seems to call for music that hovers between melancholy and a sublimely tranquil joy. And essentially the music is designed to go nowhere, but to remain a piece that is reflective and symbolic. The image of outburst of fear is highly charged and confronting, yet also imbued with a certain tragedy and compassion to my mind. The tortured menace of this painting arises from a startled face frozen in a terrified silent scream amongst these deformed and disembodied limbs. This demanded music of a fragmentary yet obsessive violence and an aggressive dissonance. In my opinion, Clay demonstrated the greatest variety of formal invention of 20th century painters. He almost never succumbed to the pressure of repeating himself, and so an astonishing array of images become ripe pickings for a composer who is inspired, energized and challenged by such intensity and diversity, and I will be satisfied if some of this is conveyed to the audience through my music.